Hello, I'm Scott Bogie here with Yusuf Ali Taleb ahead of his Cage Warriors debut against Antonio Amodeo. How are you doing today?
Yeah, I'm good, thanks. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. And how are you feeling ahead of this upcoming fight? Are the nerves starting to come in due to it being such a big organization?
Not really, in relation to the nerves, but I'm feeling quite excited for the upcoming fight. Thankfully, I've been able to fight in various parts of the world,
Yeah.
and I'm quite experienced from my previous sort of career in combat sports before transitioning to MMA. And I found that I managed to understand the nerves and use it to my own advantage. But right now, we're so far out from the fight that there aren't any nerves at the moment.
And when did you hear about this opportunity?
Um, so we were in talks with Kidros for a while, to be honest. But then this fight itself came up maybe about 3.5 weeks out from fight date. I was originally meant to fight beforehand, but then there was a few changes of opponents. But yeah, about 3.5 weeks from fight date, which is 12th of July, we agreed to fight.
So were you kind of like preparing to try and get on that card beforehand, or was it you got that fight and then the real training camp kind of started from there?
Well, to be honest, I try to I train all year round. So
Yeah.
sort of in the sort of the group of Camp 365, I don't stop training. So in an ideal world, I would have liked to have fight on the or fought on the 12th of July, which is again going to plan. And that's what we were prepping for. Whether it was going to happen or not was up in the air for a while. Because we just didn't have an opponent signed, but that was the plan. The plan, on my part, is always to be as active as possible. And my fight prior to this was February, and this was the next opportunity to fight.
Because you did have that last fight at Fight Star, and
Right.
you were able to get that unanimous decision victory. How
Correct.
was that fight for you personally?
It was good. I fought against Jonathan Carlos, who's a very experienced fighter. So he had maybe 4 or 5 times the amount of experience than I had in MMA. He's fought guys who are currently in the UFC. So I knew that fighting him was going to be a tough fight, and I was very happy with the dominant win. It was a 30-27 scorecard.
Yeah.
And it was a solid opponent.
And like you're saying, he did have that experience of fighting guys who are now in that UFC. Did you feel like having that guy, it kind of showed you where your skills were? If you could defeat him, you knew you were where you think you were, and you can now go into that big stage.
Well, I think given my experience and my training team who
Yeah.
I currently train with, um, I train with guys who are currently in the UFC. I train with guys who are in PFL. I train with guys who fight in many organizations around the world, from Muay Thai, kickboxing, MMA, UFC, PFL, sort of. So thankfully, I'm surrounded by really good fighters who I'm able to compare my skill set to. So going into the fight, I wasn't trying to use him as a measuring stick as such, because for the most part, my training day to day is against or with people who are fighting at the highest level. So really and truly, I without being egotistical as such, I'm aware of my skill set, and each time I go out there, I just try to I try to implement and show the world my skills.
Am I correct in saying that you're currently training out of GB Top Team?
Correct. So I train out of two gyms. I train out of GB Top Team and Bloodline Gym. Bloodline Gym may not be sort of a name that the MMA community knows. However, if you look in the Muay Thai and kickboxing community, particularly around the UK and the world, it's a renowned gym.
And speaking a bit more with the GB Top Team side, we'll go back to the Bloodline in a second.
Mm.
But you have been able, like you're saying, be able to train with the best MMA fighters, be able to get the UFC experience. How have that been able to listen to what their experience was growing up and be able to basically avoid the mistakes that they potentially made earlier on in their career?
Yeah, it's been a blessing. I've been fortunate to have a team who have the experience, particularly in the MMA world, where the coaches are very experienced, the fighters on the mat who I'm training with actively are very experienced. And all you need to do really, and what I try to do, is try to have an open mind and listen to my sort of teammates around me who can provide me with different advice on various topics related to the MMA world.
And then you also are at Bloodline as well. How has that been for your development? Just not in just the MMA scene, but overall in like the Muay Thai scene as that as well.
Well, to be honest, it's been a gym I've been a part of for many years now. It's where I've had basically my whole Muay Thai and kickboxing career fought out of that gym, and there's a really good crop of fighters. There always has been, and the coach there is also really, really experienced. So, in terms of my striking development in particular, I've managed to hone my skills there with my teammates day in, day out. And each time I fight, I do showcase this skill set, and I think each time I do go out there, people do recognize the difference in caliber between my striking and many others.
And what was it that kind of brought you into like the combat sports world?
Oh, so actually, it was a very random thing. Growing up in sort of rougher parts of East London, my parents took me down to my first Muay Thai class. Very likely for sort of self-defense as a young teen, and yeah, we just went from there. Really, it was never really a goal of mine to fight. I just continued to train because I enjoyed it, and then sort of fell down the rabbit hole of fighting and competing and really enjoying it.
And you are fighting at the lightweight division, probably the most competitive division in Cage Warriors. You also have got the title holder currently fighting on the Contender Series. You got the interim title who just got crowned, but then you also have got Ewan McKenzie, James Power who just lost that interim title fight, George Hardwick, who's all in line as well. Adam Cullen, I can't remember his name, but the guy who beat Adam Cullen. How big is that what you wanted to do when you came in here, was to test yourself with the best?
So I've been watching the scene for a while, and I do feel like I match up really well against a lot of the big names, all the main names that you mentioned, really. And I'd be very much up for a fight with anyone, in all honesty. It's my goal, as I mentioned earlier, is to be as active as possible. So I'm going to be fighting on the 12th of July. I'm going to hopefully go out there, put on a stellar performance, a stand-up performance, and get the win. And as soon as that happens, we're then going to look to see when we can fight next and continue to progress the career.
And do you have any sort of like dates of when I know you're not gonna take it after this fight, but are there any like dates or locations you would like to fight either next or just in the future? I know they are going back to London. I think it's November, I think I heard rumors. Would that be something that you're looking into, or do you want to expand the field?
Most definitely. I try not to look too far ahead though into the future. All I'm going to try to do is get through this fight, injury free, and then reevaluate with the team. And truthfully, get in there as soon as possible. So we'll just see what shows are available. I'm not I'm not picky as to where I want to fight. I don't mind traveling to fight, and yeah, the goal is to be as active as possible.
And you talk about your activity.
Mm,
Since March of last year, you've been able to go from 1-0 to where you are just now, which is
mm.
at 5-0. What
Yeah.
has been the key to staying as active as possible? Because obviously you do get those niggles, you do get those small injuries. How do you kind of like avoid those?
Well, thankfully, day to day, I'm a physiotherapist, which definitely helps with reducing my risk of injury through my understanding and just trying to look after my body in the best way possible. So I do feel like I have the advantage in relation to knowing how to train properly and to reduce my risk of injuries, as well as how to treat injuries so they don't become long-term issues.
And do you feel like being able to have that knowledge of how to avoid that, obviously because that's your day-to-day job, do you feel like that just gives you that slight advantage over your competitors because you know how to stay active, be able to keep training, as well as being able to get that proper rest?
Yeah, to be honest, I think it gives it a significant advantage rather than just a slight advantage. Knowing how to train, knowing when to train, knowing what may be a serious injury and what may not be a serious injury, definitely allows me to train consistently and to be able to train really well. So I do think it's an advantage that I have over most competitors.
And how are you going to celebrate the win once you've been able to get in there and get that?
To be honest, it's for me. I like good food. I'm a big foodie, so probably gonna go get some good food over in London, and then yeah, and that's about it really. Enjoy
Is there
some good food.
any certain type, or are you just going to see the first place and just walk in and just order everything?
I'm undecided to be honest, but at the moment, Turkish is usually a good spot. You know, they got really good meats. You get loads of good rice, etc. And it's not unhealthy to be honest, depending on what you get, but it's definitely a vast amount.
And how much are you able to normally eat straight after? Because obviously you do weight cut, so as soon as you put food back into that body, you just fill up so quickly. How much are you normally able to eat off a full menu?
To be honest, I usually put away a fair bit. It does depend on the time I finish fighting. The last few fights have been sort of main eventing, which means I'm finishing really late and getting to the shops
Yeah.
or restaurants quite late. So yeah, so it just depends on how much time I have really.
And like you're saying, you have been able to get big fights. In your last one, it was for that lightweight title.
Mm.
How was it being able to get that victory and be able to get that belt?
It was good. It was a nice a nice accolade to add to
Yeah.
the brand, to add to my journey. And it was something that I sought or looked to get when I first started doing MMA. I've noticed fight style being a big promotion and thought I'd fight and then win their title. So I was thankful that I could tick it off the list. And yeah, it's just another accolade along the way really. And I have many more sort of goals and ambitions to be achieving within the sport, and I'm going to slowly be ticking them off.
And how was it? Because obviously with Fightstar, they did get you on each of their shows as much as they could. I think the only
Mhm.
one that you weren't on since that Fightstar 28 one was the card in Belgium. How
Mm.
much do you thank them from being able to get you on these shows consistently and get you those opponents?
Yeah, to be honest, I'm thankful to Fight Star in the sense, and the guys who are running it all for getting me the fights because I'm now 5-0. When I first sort of started fighting in Fight Star, I was 1-0, you know.
Yeah.
So it wasn't yeah, there weren't too many shows around, particularly in London. But I think it's been a sort of mutually beneficial relationship, and I think it's been yeah, I think it's been good for everyone really.
And do you feel like, is there any sort of familiarity? Because obviously with Fightstar, they have their events and they go at the O2. With
Mm.
this fight, it's at the Indigo at the O2. So you're not really going to be changing much up from just your last fight, for example. Does that
Mm.
make that any easier?
It does. It helps with visualization and seeing how the fight may pan out. Knowing that well, I've been in the venue and sort of been in the cage, you kind of have a feel of the venue and the arena, which definitely helps. And as you said, there is a bit of familiarity with the two. And to be honest, it's quite a local venue to me. I go past there and commute past the venue nearly every single day of the week, which has been a really good reminder as to what I want to achieve.
And how being able to have the local show as your debut, obviously you can have your friends, you have your family. How much of an advantage is hearing them in the crowd?
Mm. It's always nice to have big cheers. Thankfully, I bring a good crowd, a committed crowd, and a loud crowd, which I'm really thankful for. When I'm in there, I do my very best to block it out, get the win, and then enjoy the roars really.
Just enjoy the Turkish food after.
And that's it.
And what has been your toughest fight so far?
Um, they've all been challenging in some way, shape, or form, really. So I don't really have anyone that comes to mind as such. But what I would say is that I've taken every shot I've taken something, I've learned lessons, regardless of whether there was the win or not. It's like there's always something to be taken away from it.
And do you feel like that's what helps you is that even with these wins, you're still not just coming out going, oh, I've just been him. There's nothing I can take. You're still criticizing of the performance. Like, I could do this better. I can do this better. Let's improve on this.
Of course, I think in order to be good at anything, in order to grow, you need to have a student mindset, and that I do have. I've always sort of thought myself to be quite coachable. I'm always open and listening to different sort of thoughts and styles because at the end of the day, what I need to be doing is trying to gather as much knowledge as possible to be able to mold in a style that works for me.
And what was it? Because obviously you did have just a very short amateur career. Is
Mm.
that just because of your combat history, but outside of the MMA, you feel like you just needed one or two fights just to know what you were doing, and then you can go to the pro? Or what was it that kind of made you go, that's me
Well,
ready?
Well, it was a mix, really. It was a mix of a few things. So I did have a sort of career before, and I've never shied away from it. And firstly, I wanted to get into the cage and see what that was like, because that's quite different to being in the ring. And then after that, it was trying to find and get matched up, which was quite tricky, given that I've been quite, forthcoming with my experience. Trying to get matched up with someone of a similar experience, often found that I would be going against these really established grapplers, these BJ black belts, judo black belts,
Yeah.
etc. Which again I was up for, but it got to a point where it was getting quite difficult to get matched. So I was speaking to the coaching team, and we decided that it may be better just to turn over.
Well, that sounds great. And we know you're going to put on an absolute show in the Indigo and be able to get that victory. Is there anything you like to add or anyone you want to shout out?
No, I'll just shout out to the team as usual. Bloodline Gym, GB Top Team. The Fighting Physiotherapy Clinic, as well as Aspire Inspire Clothing. Just the team sort of supporting the journey.
And if you have got any Turkish places that you like to recommend, make sure to shoot
I,
him a message.
Yeah, listen, if you're in Green Lanes, you're gonna, be treated very well. But my personal favorite is Hala Restaurant. So yeah, that's usually good. Although you can get, like I said, a number of good spots on that road.
Well, it sounds great, and we can't wait to see you get that victory. Thank you for coming on.